In 1620, while the Mayflower was in Provincetown, 18 of its men sailed in a small shallop, searching for a place to live. They came to present-day Eastham, where they were met by a group of Nauset. After a brief but violent encounter, the English left towards today's Plymouth. In 2020, we remember this first encounter. We explore its meanings for today and tomorrow.
The following text is an excerpt from Chapter 2 of Ian Saxine's book, The Story of the First Encounter at Nauset. Chapter 2 is entitled English Paths Across the Sea. In the years immediately before 1620, the Wampanoag had more important problems to deal with than the bearded strangers from across the sea, however. A powerful alliance of Micmacs from present-day Nova Scotia, well armed with guns and steel-bladed weapons obtained from their European trading partners, stormed down the coast beginning around 1600. Residents of villages as far south as Cape Cod feared the Micmacs punishing raids from the sea. In 1615, the Micmacs killed an influential leader of Massasoit's northern allies along the Saco River in the present-day Maine, scattering his followers and leaving the Nauset and their neighbors wondering if they might be next. Fearsome as the Micmacs were, it was their French trading partners who were probably responsible for the greatest catastrophe in the living memory for the Wampanoag. Beginning in 1616, a mysterious sickness spread down the coast from present-day Maine to Cape Cod, raging for 3 years. Europeans who recorded the event called it a plague, but 17th century writers used this term to describe all manner of pestilences. Whatever it was, Native Americans had no immunity to it, because most of the epidemic diseases in human history have originated in livestock, which did not exist in the Western Hemisphere. The resulting virgin soil epidemic turned vibrant communities into graveyards. An Englishman named Thomas Morton, walking through the forest near Massachusetts Bay a few years later, described the piles of bones he encountered in abandoned villages as a newfound Golgotha. According to Morton, survivors told him that they died on heaps as they lay in their houses, and the living would run away and let them die, and let their carcasses lie above the ground without burial. For in a place where many inhabited, there have been but one left alive to tell what became of the rest. Of the 2,000 residents of Patuxet, the site the Plymouth colonists chose for their town, none remained alive and on the site in 1620. The total population of the region may have decreased by 90%. Numbers can only capture one aspect of the scale of the disaster. The loss of memories and traditions passed down through generations for the affected communities is incalculable. Among the similarly afflicted Abenaki to the north, even today, notes Frederick Matthew Wiseman in his Auto-History of the Abenaki Nation, the sickness is still remembered with a prohibition to discuss it in detail. Survivors consolidated into a smaller number of villages and scrambled to make new alliances for protection. Massasoit survived the Great Mortality, but then had to make concessions to the powerful Narragansett to the west, who had avoided the brunt of the epidemic. The first Nauset on the Cape to spot the Mayflower in 1620 were by then already becoming integrated into the wider Atlantic world. They had access to a slowly growing quantity and type of trade goods from indigenous and European sources. They formed alliances to navigate the ensuing shifts in power. Although they did not understand its source, neither, for that matter, did the Europeans, the accompanying sickness showed a terrible cost to this increased exchange between peoples. For them, the encounter with the Plymouth colonists was anything but a first.
I hope you've enjoyed the 3 excerpts read from Ian Saxine's book that we commissioned here in Eastham about the first encounter. We just heard the last part of Chapter 1, background on the Native Americans. In the back of that book, Professor Saxine gives us some further reading suggestions. I'd like to share with you some of those suggestions he made for your own further reading. He says that the best book still, and it's now a few decades old, so you have hope that every library has it, is called Spirit of the New England Tribes, Indian History and Folklore, 1620 to 1884, by William Simmons. So you're seeing this on the screen, William Simmons' book. It's a classic. It's still the best in the field to talk about folklore amongst the Native Americans in New England. There's also 2 volumes by Kate Kathleen Bragdon, she often is referred to as Kate. Dr. Kathleen Bragdon gave a lecture for us that's on the Eastham Public Library website. Gave a lecture for us last fall. She has 2 volumes on the native people of southern New England, a book that's now a couple of decades old, traces their history from 1500 to 1650, and you can see that book on the screen. Then she recently completed the 2nd volume, Native People of Southern New England, from 1650 to 1775. So the first volume covers the period around the first encounter, and the 2nd volume treats the movement of the Nauset to Wampanoag territory in the town of Mashpee. There's 2 other volumes by Lisa Brooks. Lisa Brooks is an Abenaki Native American, is a young scholar in the field, but she has produced some books that are extremely important and well worth your time reading. From about a decade ago, Lisa Brooks wrote The Common Pot, and it's talking about native space, about our towns, our land, our real estate, and our relationship to the Native Americans in that land. The other volume, which just came out recently by Lisa Brooks, is called Our Beloved Kin. And there she speaks about gives a new history of King Philip's War. We invite you to look at these books sometime. Most of them are in the Eastham Public Library, are available on clams. Thank you for your attention. As we have reflected these weeks and these days on Native Americans on Cape Cod today and in the past, we will have various episodes about Native American presence in the following weeks. While our themes will cover the first encounter and then the development of the town of Nauset and Eastham and the meeting house, we will also from time to time have a Sunset Series episodes about the Native Americans who are part of our communities here on Cape Cod. Thank you very much.
My name is Joanna Hollick, and I'm the coordinator for the Sunset Series with Eastham 400. I'd like to give you a brief update on our plans for the rest of the summer regarding the Sunset Series. Each Sunday, a presenter will read an excerpt from Ian Saxine's book, The Story of the First Encounter at Nauset, and some of the other episodes for the week will reflect on themes that correlate to the topics that Ian discussed in that chapter of his book. Other episodes will continue to focus on current events, important dates in history, and meanings for today. If you're interested in finding a specific episode or a series of episodes that are related thematically, you can now do so on both our website and our YouTube channel. To find these thematic groupings on our website, you can go to the Sunset Series page on eastham400.org, and then scroll down until you see a list of all of our thematic groupings, and click on the name of the topic that you would like to look at. You can also find these same groupings on our YouTube page if you go to our channel page on YouTube, Eastham 400, and then click the Playlist tab. Thank you.